Let's talk about this guy. Ever heard of him? Ever seen him? Chances are you have. From launch, Mr. Bean immediately had huge success not just in the UK, but all over the world. But how could just 14 episodes of a TV series become a globally renowned hit? Mr. Bean has done just that and truly become a British cultural icon who's revered worldwide. Mr. Bean has been incredibly influential on my childhood and still makes me laugh as hard as I did when I first watched him. Key to the success has been to keep the incredible, distinctive humor at its core. The everyday situations which Mr. Bean creates are relevant to all types of people who can identify with his antics within the mundane. It's entirely physical comedy that is universally accessible, and Mr. Bean tapped into that universality with incredible success.
Come in, Mr. Bean!
So let's go back to see how Mr. Bean came to use the art of physical comedy to charm people all over the world without hardly saying a word. Mr. Bean made his television debut in 1990, but comedian Rowan Atkinson had been developing the character for over a decade before that first appearance. Atkinson's favorite kind of comedy is also what he performs best. Regular people doing regular things, but with a character twist.
But tonight I thought I'd really splash out on something a lot better. Go somewhere really nice.
Would you like me to join you?
No, don't trouble yourself. No, it'll be, yes? Yes, would that be okay?
He shows how gestures that are so simple but so exact can create comedy gold. He's a living legend of comedy, and with good reason. Speaking of Mr. Bean, Atkinson revealed the truth about Mr. Bean's creation. I was asked in my first term at Oxford to do a sketch in this one-night show at the Oxford Playhouse, and I'd never written anything. I'm not really naturally a writer, so I just had to invent sort of 5 minutes of something at 48 hours notice. I just stood in front of a mirror and started to mess about with my face. And this strange, surreal, sort of non-speaking character evolved. While developing the character, Atkinson explained that he was inspired by French comedian and filmmaker Jacques Tati.
À toi.
It's interesting to note that the film Mr. Bean's Holiday takes many reference points from the classic Tati film Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
It just struck a chord with me. I so admired it. It was a kind of an uncompromising comic attitude and setting that I really admired.
Especially in the way it blends sentiment with humor in its telling of Bean's cross-country journey. Mr. Bean also shares many similarities with Monsieur Hulot as a character, both being clumsy and naive of the world around them, and both being well-meaning despite their capacity for causing disaster. Atkinson was also inspired by another famous comedy creation when developing Mr. Bean, Inspector Clouseau. The slapstick character, brought famously to life by Peter Sellers, was also responsible for the brand of comedy that made Mr. Bean so popular.
Does your dear go back? No? Oh. Yes, dear again. I thought you said your dog did not bite.
That is not my dog.
It's all about the attitude. He has an amazing grasp of nonverbal characterization. He manages to capture a person in all of their quirks, making them come through as lifelike and relatable, even in the middle of expert physical comedy. You relate, you understand, you recognize, and of course, you laugh. Atkinson is a performer through and through, and his characters and jokes come to life even more on the small screen than they do on the large one. because all he needs is a camera and his innate physicality to have you in stitches. He understands that the character and the attitude is the joke even more than the punchline. This is the comedy of personality rather than the comedy of gags. It's not about doing funny things, it's about doing something quite normal in a funny way. Watching Mr. Bean, you can be reminded of the great silent comedies. This isn't only because Atkinson's comic creation doesn't speak, but because his slapstick antics resemble those performed by Charlie Chaplin, Stan Laurel, Buster Keaton, and more. There's no underestimating how popular Charlie Chaplin was in his day. He was probably the most famous person on earth during his height. Obviously, Mr. Bean doesn't have the heart that Chaplin had, but this level of excitement over physical comedians is not unprecedented. Whether he's wandering around with a turkey implanted on his head or trying to stay awake and uprooted in his seat during a particularly boring church sermon, he has never failed to make people laugh. Mainly, however, Mr. Bean was the result of decades of the comic studying himself. As Stephen Fry once memorably said of Atkinson, "It is as if God had an extra jar of comic talent, and for a joke gave it to a nerdy, anoract northern chemist."
And there's a kind of moment between the two of you.
Yes.
Yes, that might be quite good. Yeah. That's quite good. Yes, exactly. Good. Yeah, that might be all I need.
Atkinson himself has said he based Bean on his 9-year-old self. The essence of Mr. Bean is that he's entirely selfish and self-centered and doesn't really acknowledge the outside world. He's a child in a man's body, which is what most visual comedians are about. What was created in front of a bathroom mirror had become a worldwide phenomenon and brand more than 30 years after the show's original airing. Atkinson retired Mr. Bean in 2012, citing he needs to move away from physical comedy due to his advancing years, but later brought the character back to life one last time to honor Mr. Bean's 25th anniversary in 2015. Mr. Bean is universally loved by myself and millions of other people across the world. And because of the mostly silent nature of the character, the classic art of physical comedy, and the charm and genius of Rowan Atkinson, he can be adored by ordinary people of all countries and languages. That's the versatility great physical comedy has. No words need to be spoken to elicit a laugh from a child or an adult. It's one of the great pleasures of life. And we can sure use a laugh now more than ever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.